So, Ramon, the president says he's not responsible for energy generation.
Yeah, interestingly enough, there's a court case going on where various, political parties and civic organizations are taking the government to court to sort of end load shedding or to have an understanding of what's going on, and they want various critical infrastructure to be removed from the load shedding schedule. So therefore, in response to this court case, the president has to submit an affidavit of which he has deposed. And in the president's affidavit to this court case, he says, well, actually, there's no legal duty upon him under the Constitution that forces him to end load shedding, which is a very, very strange argument, especially in times of like stage 6 load shedding, stage 4 load shedding, and the 15-year history of load shedding, where the ANC just keeps banging on about solving load shedding. But when the shit hits the fan, now it's no longer his duty to end load shedding. Weird argument.
Yeah, very weird, especially seeing as his argument is that it's down to the local municipalities to generate their own electricity and water, which actually, if you look at it in places like the Western Cape, would love that. They'd absolutely adore that. They'd buy their electricity from anywhere that they could. However, there is one major flaw in the president's logic, and that is that the only party who can actually generate electricity and that you can buy electricity from in law is Eskom. So, whilst he's technically correct that the municipalities have to buy it, it's kind of like saying, well, it's your job, Ramon, to buy a cool drink from wherever you want it, but the only place you can buy from is Coca-Cola. So you've got a choice as long as it's Coca-Cola, right? And then he says, well, actually, it's not our responsibility. Well, no, it is, because you run Eskom, and the only place we can buy electricity from is Eskom. In the constitutional democracy, it works like this. The president appoints his cabinet based on his own discretion. The president has unilateral decision on that, meaning basically he has the sole authority on being able to do it. If he wants to appoint a cabinet full of Al Jamar jihadis, that's his choice. He doesn't actually have to consult with anybody. That's the joy of being the president. But that being said, remember that the government is the 100% shareholder of these companies, even though they're not independent, which means that they dictate exactly the policy and the way that these companies are run, which means that ultimately, if the state-owned enterprise fails, it has to be the obligation of somebody, or has to be the responsibility of somebody who failed it. That may be the CEO. The CEO may then say, well, actually the failing rests with the minister. And the minister in turn would say, actually the failure rests with the president because he appointed me. He's the one who gave me the job in the first place. The responsibility, no matter which way you look at it, rests with the president. So how can you turn around now and say, well, actually it's not my fault. It's not me. I didn't do it. Bit of a liar, don't you think?
I'll explain exactly why he thinks this way just as soon as we get back from this quick ad break from Satsatcker. Let's be honest, Bitcoin is by far the best performing asset of the last decade, and a lot of people are using Bitcoin to hedge themselves against government overreach and fiat currency debasement, otherwise known as inflation. And that's why the guys over at Bitvice have developed their latest product, Satsatcker. Essentially, you set a debit order, you accumulate Bitcoin every single month. Your Bitcoin won't be on an exchange, it won't be in anyone's hands, it will be directly deposited into your private wallet. So accumulate Bitcoin today, and every single month you set the price, you set the frequency, Satsatcker does all the rest. In order to get started, click the link in the description below. And we are back. And Byron, the reason why the president doesn't think there's a legal duty upon him to end load shedding is because, as we keep saying on this show, the ANC has given up on governing. He may be technically correct in terms of the law, but what it shows is an absolute failure to understand, most importantly for the ANC, is that the gig is up for the most part. Governance is no longer required for South Africa, and therefore all they're doing is holding on for the graft. The more you look at the ANC in terms of how they answer affidavits, in terms of how they answer questions during the Kusona address, even if you look at their budget speech, very pragmatic budget speech, by the way. These are not people with ideas on how to solve anything. These are people who are just out of ideas, who are basically leveraging on the private sector to sort those problems out. And in the end of it, they are sort of releasing their hold on governing. They're just holding onto the patronage network at all costs.
Yeah, and whilst I can agree with that, there are certain things that everybody needs to remind themselves, and that is, these commie bastards seem to have this idea of central command. This commie logic rests in the 1960s. It has no place in the modern world. This central command structure hasn't worked anywhere in the world. You know, many observers will say around the world, communism was brought into the countries usually through either a violent revolution or through a vote. That's how they came in, but they always left through violent coups. No one ever just relinquished control. Once the commies are in, the only way to get them out is through a bloody revolution. And in this instance, in South Africa, it appears that we are actually bucking the trend. The only way to get them out is by saying, You're responsible for that. And they go, oh, it's not me. What? You want me to do work? No. It's not my job. Get someone else to do it. And that's exactly what we are now seeing time and time again in the Republic. Policing doesn't work. Oh, well, get private security. Hospitals don't work. Oh, well, get a medical aid. And now, electricity doesn't work. Maybe go off grid and don't call us, we'll call you. I don't know why we still call it a government. It's not a government. It doesn't govern. All it does is just steal.
But once again, we are in that paradigm, and we keep reiterating this on Morning Shot. We're in the perfect paradigm where the government can't do anything. They've given up and have basically incentivized all the alternatives to their power. We say this over and over and over again, and I hope people watching do actually understand this. The government is giving you an incentive, a shitty incentive, but an incentive nevertheless to go off grid with solar. Right? They're not hyperinflating the currency. They're not having any form of expropriation of land. They're not talking about the NHI anymore. All that popular stuff is gone. Like, that time is over. And now there's just the realization that they can't save the country. So therefore they're just holding on until something happens next year sometime, during the course of the election perhaps. But they've given up. And that's wonderful. That's wonderful news. We should all welcome this.
Yeah, I mean, the greatest irony in South Africa is that what the governments around the world seem to do is the governments around the world want more control and more say in things. And our government actually seems to be bucking that trend. They want less control and they want less say in things because they've fucked it all up. And now that they've fucked it all up, the responsibility is on them to fix it. And they know they can't. So what they're actually doing is they're actually becoming a pioneering state. And they're going, ha ha ha, we need to be like pioneers, frontiers. You guys go out and fix stuff and we'll just, we'll wait and watch. The problem is, as they relinquish more control back to the private citizens, the citizens will go off grid, find out alternative means, create their own structures. Good luck in ever getting control back from us, you dirty commie scumbags. Once it's gone, it's gone. And the next time you knock at my door, I'll be waiting with a rifle in hand. And that's exactly the situation and the environment that the ANC are creating. So I, for one, say, Viva ANC! Viva!
In the quest to build the greatest communist nation in Africa, we've created the most libertarian nation in the world. Now that, my friends, is good politics. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.